in the river of life. Yeah. I'm in the river of life. I swear in I'm in the river of life. Holy Lord, I'm in the river of life. Oh yeah, river of life, oh God, river of life, oh Jesus, and river of life. I swim in it, yeah, river of life, river of life, yeah, 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 river of life.
I'm Gemma Wenger, and I'm so excited to have a very special guest with me. She is just young and full of energy, but she wrote a very powerful book, God's Answer to Abortion. Taylor Coco Patterson, thank you so much for being with me today.
Thank you, Gemma, for having me. I'm so happy. Thank you.
It's just a pleasure. Now, you told me your testimony, and you are beautiful, you're gorgeous, but you were out in the world, you were partying, being irresponsible, doing your own thing. How did you get saved, and what kind of lifestyle did you come from?
Well, I came from a very, I want to call it lonely, confused, and simply out of control sort of lifestyle, where I made my own rules, and lived according to my rules and without any regard for anyone else. So very tumultuous childhood, and also a teenager, pretty wild.
Now, your mother and father, were they in the house? Or?
My mother was. So I do come from a single family home, even though my dad remained in the picture, but he was not in the home with me. So I ended up becoming a teenage mother early on. So I did have my first child as a teenager around 13 years old. And that was only because my mother has always been what we refer to as a praying mother. So she prayed for me, and she was a devout Christian woman. So I wanted to have an abortion then, and she wouldn't allow me to do so. So I did grow up with my first son. We grew up together. So teenage mom. And then later on, once I graduated from that type of life where I was a, rambunctious maverick of a teenager, I moved to LA because I got accepted into UCLA. It took a lot for that to happen because I was actually almost a high school dropout because of the pregnancy and feeling not accepted and rejected by my peers. When I came to LA, I got involved in some, even though I was a student at UCLA, I had to pay my way through college. So I did some videos and things like that. And after college, I met my boyfriend at the time. And we were engaged in a very wild kind of life. I want to say strip clubs, swingers. He doesn't like me to mention that part, but
it's the truth.
It is the truth.
And there are people listening who are engaged in that, and it is part of society, and people are doing it. But at the same time, that didn't bring you happiness. It didn't bring you joy.
No, it actually left me devoid of any joy and quite empty. So as, I think there's a quote in the Bible that speaks about sin. When you take it and it's on your tongue, it tastes sweet. But when you swallow and it goes down, it really creates like a hellfire inside of you. So while we were engaged in our activities, of course, the lure of sin is always wonderful, and it looks really shiny and gold when it's, when Satan is alluring you and attracting you into the world. But once you get in there and you do what you're doing and the party's over, like they say in Hollywood, the morning after, you always feel, or I always felt, devoid of any happiness, devoid of any true worth and value and meaning as a human being. And I also felt that way for the other girls who were, engaged with what we were engaged with the swingers parties, etc. So I felt like trash, never like treasure, right before my boyfriend, my behavior in Hollywood, trying to get into the industry, etc.
Trying to be an actress.
Trying to be an actress often left me the next morning alone, So, the men, when they're luring you and they're attracting you into the world, it's always like you're the most beautiful thing and you're very valued by them. But after, that the party was over and they got what they wanted, the next day I was by myself. I was alone. And it just really ended up in me becoming one piece of trash, just one lump of trash, day in and day out. And to the point to where, like with prostitution, I want to compare myself almost to that of a prostitute, because even though I wasn't collecting money, for what I was engaging in, I was selling my soul. So in other words, the very next day, it was just like, the more I felt devalued by men, the more I devalued myself. So the worse the behavior got. So in other words, it was just constantly seeking that next high. So whatever the next high was, that's what I was seeking. And the next high usually was engaging in promiscuous sex with men, unprotected. Fast forward beyond that life, my current husband and I, at the time boyfriend and girlfriend, we came together. And I want to share this with you because some women may be able to relate to this. It's a competitive world out there when it comes to dating, right? And all the women now, we can do all the things in the world to make ourselves beautiful, right? So because it's so competitive, I feel that sometimes women will do things men want them to do that they themselves might not necessarily want to do, but they do these things and engage in these things because they want the man to feel they're the best woman of all the other women. So initially, I was doing that too for my current boyfriend, current husband, at the time boyfriend.
You were trying to win him by
I was trying
being
to,
the best, by giving him what he wanted.
Sometimes they use this colloquial term, ride or die. I wanted him to know that I was going to be the one. I'm every woman that you need. So if you want to go and pick up a couple of women, we can do that. If you want to go hang out and maybe I wasn't a hardcore drug user. That's never been my thing, but I'm social. So if I was placed in an environment where things were happening, then I would do it to make sure he knew that, look, here I am, I'm doing this, and I'm doing this for you. So that was the life that led to me becoming pregnant. And as you know, no one wants to get pregnant by a man who deep down inside we know that he's not going to marry us, or that he doesn't value us and he doesn't want us. So I did become pregnant. And when I did, I had an abortion. One thing I want to say to women, all women, it's not just you who has the abortion, it's the man too. Oftentimes men don't see themselves as having abortions, but if they're encouraging the woman to have the abortion, they too are having an abortion. They're just not the one having the child taken out of their womb, if that makes sense.
It's their child also. It's
right.
Part of them.
Not only that, but it's also their decision. Sometimes women want to keep babies, and the man tells them, no, we're not doing that. So in that case, I want men to understand, not trying to bash men or anything, or bash women, do anything like that, but men are very complicit in some of those decisions that are made. Not all the time, but sometimes. So in my case, my then boyfriend was very complicit, and very involved.
He was pushing the abortion.
That's right, because neither he or I wanted to commit like that at that time.
So you weren't ready, but at the same time you had a living child that you had to deal with. There was a child inside of you.
That's right.
What about your mom? Did you talk to your mom about?
I never told her about this one, because she would have encouraged me to do what God in her mind would have wanted me to do. So this was a big secret. And I want to say that oftentimes women do this in secrecy. It's not something that we tell anyone. I didn't tell my friends. I didn't tell the world. Quite frankly, it was what I want to call a nightmare at the moment, because, I wanted my body to stay good. I didn't want to go through that process again. So I just did it in secrecy. But the one person who did know was God. And I want to say God, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. That means Jesus knew. And I did talk to God about what I was going to do. And at the time, I thought nothing of it, because it was all about me. It was, I need to save my life. I'm not ready for a child, and I'm not going to marry this guy. And this is a fresh new relationship. What do I look like having a baby by someone a few months after meeting them? that just wouldn't make sense to me. And I was like, I'm a college graduate. I'm an educated woman now, so I know better,
But at the same time, you were sleeping with this person and having unprotected sex.
Yes. Which today, in hindsight, I know was very irresponsible, And I want to say that it's selfish. And if Jesus didn't show me this as we get forward to that part, but I knew that having unprotected sex was a selfish act because it could lead to me becoming pregnant. But the thing is I'm like, there's Planned Parenthood, So if I become pregnant, I know who has my back, And, Planned Parenthood, even though they do provide some good aspects to women in the communities, especially communities where women can't afford proper health care, the biggest thing my friends and I always knew Planned Parenthood for was abortion. We could go there and just
erase the problem.
And unfortunately, even referring to the child in our wombs as a problem, that's wrong. That's wrong. That's a problem. How we look at it. And upon growing up, I do want to share this part because not every woman fits this mold, but I knew several women who were teenagers. We would get pregnant, and by men who we knew didn't want us. We were just having a good time and would have abortion after abortion after abortion. And it got to the point to where almost one of the little dirty secrets is abortions typically would cost somewhere between $450 to $500, but we would ask the guys to give us $1,000. So we would have some money left in our pockets. So I didn't do that, but I'm witness and privy to many girls who it became a money-making sort of mechanism for them too.
Yeah. Wow. How did you get saved? How did you turn your life around? How did you realize that God had a better plan for you?
Well, one thing I do want to shine some light on is I've always been of a Christian background, right? So I want to say I was a professing Christian, even when I was out there partying. And I wouldn't dissuade anyone from doing that. I would say if you're out there partying, snorting coke or smoking weed at the strip club, doing things with your body, it's okay to pray and it's okay to ask God to forgive you. I would encourage people to keep doing that. I was doing that, but I was professing on Saturday, Monday through Saturday, God, I love you, Jesus. I would wake up and say my prayers, but on the weekends I would go out and party. So I would say I was always walking in a realm of darkness while professing to be walking in the light. The way that my whole life turned around was when I started having dreams in the year of 2012, which was 7 years after I had the abortion. I had the abortion in the year of 2005. So I thought I was okay. I thought as long as you go to church and you pray and you just tell God you love him, that's enough for you. That's enough. But when I had the dream, Jesus actually came to me in a dream and revealed himself to me. He was floating on a cloud. And I didn't know it was Jesus. I didn't know what was happening at the time. I had probably partied a few nights before, so totally wasn't expecting it. But he was floating on a dark cloud and it stretched across the whole sky. And the thing that was so interesting is I was lying down on my back with my arms wide open in a green pasture. And I was just laying there looking at the sky, and then along came Jesus in the sky. And behind me were buildings that had appeared to be buildings that would be like a ghetto or dilapidated buildings, but they had been cleaned white as snow. So they were whiter than any white I can describe behind me, the buildings. And I was just laying there like, I don't know what this is, but maybe that's Jesus. I didn't even know at the time it was Jesus. And then immediately his eyes opened and closed, and I knew that was Jesus. Because in the dream I was asking, is that Jesus? I was looking up like, whoa, could that be Jesus? And that was the first dream. And basically what turned me from being a professing Christian who was still walking in darkness to a Christian who was not only professing Jesus Christ, but also walking in the light, walking in the Word, were the dreams. when I started having the dreams. And the first dream was of Jesus. And if you want to ask me, I don't know, you want to prompt me, or I can tell you the remaining dreams that I had, a series of dreams of a little boy.
So those dreams are all documented in your book, God's Answer to Abortion.
Yes, yes.
So why don't you go ahead and share some of those dreams and what was God telling you? What was God speaking to you? What was he saying?
So the very first thing Jesus did, and I want to kind of relate it to the Bible, is he revealed himself to me. So that was the first dream. But prior to it, and you know, I have to say it in real time because it wasn't chronological order. But Joyce Myers is a very famous,
Evangelist.
Female evangelist. After Jesus revealed himself to me, then came the messengers. So Joyce Myers was the very first messenger Jesus sent to me. And on her show, one day she was speaking about a little girl in China who was also a teenage pregnancy. She concealed the pregnancy from her parents and basically gave birth to the child, a baby girl, in the toilet. And she mummified the baby and put the baby in her closet. And her parents found out later by discovering the body that she had been pregnant and she had a baby by her teenage boyfriend. That was Joyce Myers, and that was her show, and that was the first message. So at the time, I was just flipping channels, surfing channels, and I just landed on that show, and I like Joyce Myers, so I continued to watch. At the time, it meant nothing to me because I was like, I didn't understand it. I just thought it was sad. But after Joyce Myers, then came Rabbi Snyder, and you do know Rabbi Snyder. He came and he started speaking about dreams and visions, and he said, he was looking at the camera when he was talking to me, and he said, "Behold, God is going to start to speak to you by way of dreams and visions." And he said, in the Bible it says, young men will dream dreams and old men will prophesy. I don't think I'm saying it exactly correctly, but I'm paraphrasing. So one thing that attracted me to Rabbi Snyder was the fact that his show had candles. And it was a very comforting kind of cinematic view. And I'm a candle person. So for that reason, when I was channel surfing, trying to figure out which rabbi I was going to, or, pastor I was going to listen to that day, I stopped with him. And it was only because I like candles. So that attracted me to the show.
So you really got a lot of your training and a lot of messages from God through television.
Yes, through the what we use now as a way of communication, right? So back in the day, there might have been scrolls. There might have been, people communicating verbally through, oral. But now, modern world, we use television, we use radio, we use everything. So
social media.
God, in other words, is not limited to whatever was the means back in his day of communication. He's now made, whatever way that he can use to communicate and to get through to you, he will. So at the time it was Rabbi Kurt Snyder, and he did a whole series on dreams and visions. So he was the second messenger that God sent to me. And Joseph Prince, I believe, was the third messenger. I hope I'm not forgetting any. Joyce Myers was first. I like to kind of, compare her to Mary Magdalene, if you think about it, because of all the disciples, there was one female disciple. And even when Jesus at his tomb, the first disciple to discover Jesus in the tomb was who? Mary Magdalene. So I looked, in hindsight, when I looked back on the messengers that were sent to me, I said, wow, it's interesting that God chose Joyce Myers as the first messenger to come to me. And then there was Rabbi Snyder. And then there was Joseph Prince. So Joseph Prince's message was the message of what? The message of grace. Like, God's grace is sufficient for your life. At one point, I think I was working to gain God's approval and to try to get him to love me. But when I started listening to Joseph Prince, it became clear to me that you don't work for God's love. You try to walk and live your life in accordance with his will. And his grace is sufficient, meaning that he will forgive you, that he's a loving God, all loving God. And this is what he showed me through the messengers. So the very first dream was of a little baby. I don't want to call him a little boy, a little baby. And he had his mouth open and he was looking at me. And then somehow there was a banana in the dream. And I said, here, I gave him a banana in the dream, right? And he ate it so fast that it was like he was starving for food. And then I woke up. So in hindsight, when I got a chance to think about that very first dream, that was my son. And what the dream was trying to reveal to me.
The one you had aborted.
The one I aborted.
And how did you know that was your son?
At that time, I didn't. So at the time, it was just a hungry baby. One of the chapters in the book is titled The Hungry Baby. I didn't know who the baby was. I just know that I had food in my hand and it was a banana, and I gave it to him and he ate it so fast, and then I woke up. So in hindsight, after I came into the realization, which it took at least a year or two to try to put all this together, I realized that very first dream was telling me your baby, your son is in heaven and he's hungry for your love. He's waiting for you. So that was the very first dream. And then I had a series of dreams of him, 9 total, only in the year of 2012. The very second dream that came, he was sitting where you're sitting now, and he never looked at me in that very second dream. He was just looking straight ahead as though he was looking at the door. And he was wearing a red onesie outfit, and he was swinging his legs back and forth, the way a child would if they were sitting in a chair to kind of comfort themselves, and I didn't know what was going on. I just know that as I'm sitting next to you, I was sitting next to him, and we were sitting on a humongous green couch, like the deepest color forest green you could see. And the couch was made out of some sort of material that was so soft that it felt like butter next to my skin. And I was just looking at him kind of confused, like, okay, where am I? And I didn't know where I was. So I started kind of looking all around. And then I was trying to speak to him, but it wasn't audibly, it was with my mind. And I was wondering, like, well, who are you? And he never looked at me. He never spoke to me. He just looked straight ahead, like straight ahead. And so I just sat there too. And I was communicating with him like, you know how you and I are developing a rapport? So at some point or another, we did develop a rapport, but it was more like, you're just so cute, the way any adult would with a child. And next thing I know, he got up and he darted for the front door. And I was like, oh my God, because we were in a house, and I can't describe how the house looked other than this couch. And he ran straight through the front door. And I was like, oh my gosh, I was in complete panic, like, please stop, I don't know what's outside the door. And immediately outside the door, he kind of just went through the door. I don't know how he got out of there so fast. And I was right behind him, but I couldn't catch him. There was a chain link fence around a little small, like brick kind of house, right? And down the street, coming from the left side of the street, was a big diesel truck, red in color, like what do you call those, 8-wheelers or what have you? And I'm watching him run, and I'm looking at the truck, and the chain link fence made it to where I could see everything that was happening. Next thing I know, I'm screaming, I'm yelling, I'm flailing my arms like, please stop, you're gonna get hurt. And I wasn't able to reach him. I wasn't able to stop him from getting through the gate. Next thing I know, he was smashed by this big diesel truck. And I woke up I awoke myself from the dream, kicking and screaming like, oh God, like, God, why would you let me have such an awful, terrible dream? And I remember crying like, oh my God, the little boy just got crushed. Now, in hindsight, when I look back on it, and it took me, like I said, at least 2 years to try to piece together what was really happening. I said, if you think about a chain link fence, right? The chain link fence makes it to where you can see everything. So nothing will be concealed from you. So I took it to be that what Jesus was saying is nothing will be concealed. You will see the truth. And not to hurt me. And Jesus didn't say that. I'm saying I had to, how Jesus speaks in parables, right? In the Bible, he often spoke in parables, and he often gave stories, like of things that happened. So this dream was a story essentially. Do you see what I'm saying? And so I had to think about it and put together that the reason the fence wasn't made out of wood or stone or marble or brick was so that I could see the truth of what abortions do and what the abortion had done to my son. So what had the abortion done? Well, this diesel truck crushed his body to the point to where he was obliterated. It was nothing left. So I believe the metaphor of the dream later, when I look back on everything, was that God was showing me that the children were being crushed. And what that diesel truck had done to my child is what the abortion had done to my child in my womb.
In the process of aborting
the child. Now, in the Bible, if you think about it, everything has a meaning. There's no word for a coincidence in the Hebrew Bible. And during the studies for my book, I went back to the Hebrew Bible. There's no word for a coincidence. So that dream was no coincidence. The first dream was no coincidence. The messengers were no coincidence. This was all according and planned in accordance with God's timing, right? So the fact that the little boy or the baby, my son, was sitting on my left side in the first dream really was significant, because if you think about it, when Jesus died on the cross, what did he say after he died? He ascended to the right hand side of God's throne, right? So I took it to be symbolically, after all of the dreams, and I pieced it all together and reading the Bible, the Hebrew Bible, that the right side is the heavenly side, and that the left side represents the earthly realm, right? The truck was coming from the left side. So everything that was happening while my son was still here on earth came from the left side. The third dream that I had of him, he came back, but he was sitting to my right. And again, while I was having these dreams early on, I had no idea who the child was. All I knew is that there was a child visiting me in dreams, and I didn't understand why the same child was coming to me in dreams, multiple repetition. So by the third dream, I'm like, whoa, what is this? You know, because here he is again, but this time we're in the same house, we're sitting on the same green couch, but this time he's sitting to my right. And he's still wearing the same clothes, and he's still sitting like with a happy, you know, kind of happy vibe going on. He was kicking his feet. And when I looked at him, I don't want to turn right, but I was looking to my right. I'm like, oh, what are you? I'm like, and I'm trying to talk to him the way I would talk to you. Like, oh, didn't you get, how are you still? So I'm like caught. I can't even speak because I'm like, I'm trying to say you died. So how are you still alive?
How can they get in touch with you?
So there's a few ways. I have email, which is Taylor Coco, COCO 44@gmail.com. So if anyone is interested in speaking with me or praying with me, I would love to join myself with you. As Jesus said, where there are two or more gathered in his name, for he is in the center. So Taylor, TAYLOR, COCO 44@gmail.com. Also Instagram, you can message me at Taylor Coco 8. Taylor Coco 8 is where I receive all my DM messages.
Praise God. And how can they get the book, God's Answer to Abortion? And this was published by TBN.
Trilogy Books at TBN, Trinity Broadcasting Television Network. I'm a first-time author, and they believed enough in the message to publish me. You can get it on Amazon, Amazon Books, Barnes & Nobles, TrilogyBooks.com. My most favorite place to go is Amazon, because for all new authors, it just shows that there's a presence of people who do believe in the message and they do support you. So Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, it's everywhere.
Thank you so much for watching this life-changing interview with Taylor Coco Patterson. And just know that you can do all things through Jesus Christ, who gives you strength. I'm Gemma Wenger, and you're watching Beauty for Ashes.